I am thrilled to be here today. Hello, everybody, and welcome. Happy holidays to all of you as well. I've got a lot to share with you today. I'm not going to speak anymore about why I feel compelled to talk about all of this, because you're all here because you want some tips on how to position yourself for the position that you want. Now, that may be internally in your company or that may be externally. But my hope for all of you today is that you will walk away with one or two tips to do something different and differently to position yourself. So I've got lots to say. I do hope that you will raise your hand. You'll throw some questions into the Q&A. I am going to throw some questions out and ask you to respond in the chat feature. So look for that chat feature when the time comes. But I really am excited to be here, and I thank BAFT for the opportunity to do this. So look, position yourself for the position you want. I want to ask you today to change your mindset. I want you to think differently about you as the product, you as the value proposition. Because if you want to position yourself better, differently, for more compelling roles, whatever that might mean to you, you're going to have to do some things differently. You really are. I don't care that we now live in an AI world. I don't care that automation and algorithms drive decisions, drive activities. At the end of the day, this is about you. This is about what you can do and what you frankly have control over. So think about how you perceive yourself as an applicant, a candidate. All right, I'm going to ask you to put that aside and think about yourself as the product, as the solution, as the answer to somebody's problem. Because at the end of the day, you're solving for a problem. Again, whether you are looking for that next opportunity internally within your company, you want to look externally, you want to change your career completely. And by the way, there are people here who've signed up for this webinar who don't come from the transaction banking, treasury services banking world. They come from other industries. My message is the same to all of you. You need to think differently about how you are positioning yourself and presenting yourself. So when you apply for a job, frankly, you're positioning yourself as the solution and answer to a problem that somebody has. And that problem could be lack of growth, stunted growth, lack of product development, no market share, whatever it is, but you need to figure out what that problem is so you can solve for it. So yes, I am a recruiter. When clients hire me, I always ask them, fine, you want me to find this particular candidate for you with these characteristics and this location, understanding these products, but what is the problem we're solving for? And honestly, you need to be asking yourself that question every day when you get up for whatever it is that you're doing every day. What is the problem I'm solving for? So candidates often think in terms of responsibilities, but hiring managers don't buy responsibilities. They buy results. They buy contribution. They buy impact. And your ability to translate your experience into impact, contribution, results, metrics, which we're going to talk about, that is what you need to do. I will tell you, hiring managers also look for personality and energy. Let's talk about energy for a moment. It's 9:07 in the morning. It's the holidays. Everybody's got a lot on their plate. Energy is important. Not all of you are born as extroverts like I am. Not all of you wake up like this every day, and I really do wake up like this every day. I can't help it. It just happens naturally. But for those of you who struggle with portraying energy, showing that you have the energy for a new role. Maybe that's another session we can have, but that is something that you need to work on, because I will tell you time and time again, I have hiring managers coming back to me telling me this candidate can do what I need them to do, but the lack of energy, the lack of emotion that is coming through isn't going to work for us in this organization. We need, particularly if you're interviewing for sales positions, we need people who can motivate, and that is a level of energy. So that is something that I want you to think about as well. But let's go back to, and forgive me, I have allergies, so forgive me for doing this, sorry. I mentioned candidates frequently think in terms of responsibilities. You need to change your frame of mind. Think about contribution, impact, results. What are you doing every day that is helping the top line, the bottom line, market share, wallet share? What are you doing? Once you shift your thinking to being the solution, you change from being an applicant to a problem solver and an answer. So let's talk about what else differentiates candidates. Clarity. Your ability to describe succinctly what you do. And again, I'm suggesting that you don't just tell people, I am responsible for a team of X, Y, and Z, and leave it at that. That's flat. What you really ought to be saying is, I lead a team of 3 people who contribute X percentage of the firm's revenue, or I represent a team, or I'm an individual contributor and my contributions have this kind of impact on the company. I mean, that is what you want to convey. That is what you have to convey. Because if you can't succinctly say that, a hiring manager who, by the way, is only thinking about their problem, not really you. You could be the answer to their problem, but if you don't present yourself as the answer, again, understanding what problem you're solving for, the hiring manager will pass. The hiring manager will pass. So that's clarity. Look, relevance is important as well, right? You need the skills. And I am of the opinion that by the time you get to the interview, you've already proven that you have the skills and the experience for the role that you might be interviewing for. But you need to convey that you are the right solution and answer. And what's the best way to do that? Proof, evidence, metrics. So I am going to talk about resumes, and this topic will come up again. I can tell you that I see resumes all day long. I see hundreds of them a month, new ones. 97% of the resumes that I see have no metrics in them. No metrics. It looks like a job description, by the way. It looks like a job description. That's not a resume. That's a job description. So on your resume, you need to add metrics to show that you are successful. Otherwise, it's just a job description and nobody knows if you're successful because you don't put any data or metrics in there to show that you grew something, you built something, you improved something. You have got to have metrics. And by the way, every year, and now we're at the end of the year, you can start today. If this is the one takeaway, this is a good one. You should keep a tally of your accomplishments throughout the year, whatever they may be, however big or however small, and you should define it within some financial term. Here's a couple examples. Right, you grew revenue, you're in sales. So you increased revenue, you exceeded your budget, but by how much? By how much? What percentage? Do you have 44% growth year on year over where you started from? Great, make a note of that so that at the end of the year or whenever, throughout the year when you're having evaluations with your manager, you can go to the table with data. Data speaks so much louder than the words that you say about, but I've done a good job. Everybody does a good job, but not everybody has the metrics to prove it. Okay, there is something in the chat. And the question is, how do you know the problem they need the solution for? You ask them. If you are interviewing, you ought to ask that question. You ought to ask the question of the recruiter, and the recruiter should be able to answer that immediately and quickly. If you are talking to colleagues internally because you think you might want to do something different, you ask around about what's the problem you're trying to solve. Help me understand the group. Help me understand the problem you're trying to solve, and let me see if I might be the answer. I think that's a bold question. I think it's an obvious question. And I think that's how you figure it out. Because the problem is, if you don't ask the questions, how will you know? You may make a totally improper assumption, and that's not going to get you where you want to go. By the way, I'm going to come to this, but I'm going to come to asking questions in a moment. So metrics, I'm telling you, metrics, metrics, metrics. All right. I also want to talk about what else differentiates candidates. Presence. Presence. I suggest to all of you that you take a public speaking class. Whether you've taken one or not, practice your public speaking skills. Practice talking to an audience. Practice talking to a camera. Look at yourself. It's hard. I don't really like looking at myself. I don't like watching videos of myself because all I do is criticize myself. Okay, let's put that aside. I also listen to how I speak, the tone of my voice, the speed with which I speak. Do I ever stop? Do I ever pause? And I try to learn from that. I also ask people for feedback. But how you show up has everything to do with confidence, your listening skills, your engagement. Look, imposter syndrome is real. I was just texting with a friend of mine about an hour ago who texted to say, good luck. And I said, I'm nervous. Well, what if I have nothing to say? You know what? We all go through that. But when you show up and when you need to be present, you need to be present and you need to show up. So your presence is important. By the way, everybody, make sure that you know how to use Zoom and you know how to use Teams and Google Meets or whatever it is. I mean, we're all on there all day, right? And look at how you present yourself, because that confidence, whether you may feel it or not, you can fake it. And you will need to fake it to present yourself, I think, in the ways that the receiving party wants to experience you. So I'm going to quickly show, I'm going to go back to the question I've just seen about metrics. I'm in the chat. Let's assume that any conversation you're having with a hiring manager, like, you have the skills. You have the skills to do the job. What do you think are the two non-technical attributes that a hiring manager wants to see when you interview? Throw some things in the chat. I want to see if people get them. Throw anything in the chat that you think. EQ. Okay. Anything else? Attitude. Thank you. Yep. Optimism. Willingness to learn. Passion. Oh, I like these. Communications, relationship building skills, engagement, adaptability. These are good. Interpersonal skills that AI cannot solve for today. Curiosity, conviction, self-sufficiency, collaboration. I love it. Creativity, kindness. These are great. Here are my two. Curiosity, absolutely. And energy. Now, energy can be conviction. It can be passion. The people you are talking to on the receiving end, the hiring managers, right? For simplicity, let's just call everybody a hiring manager that you might be talking to. Yes, they want to know that you're the answer to their problems, but they also want to know that you have the energy and the curiosity. And again, going back to that question about how do you know what the problem is that you're solving for? You ask the question. I cannot impress upon all of you to ask questions. I think all too often you read a job description, you think you're right for it, you go and interview, and you don't have meaningful questions to ask anybody about culture, about challenges. What's the hardest thing about this role? Why are you looking externally? Don't you have anybody internally to fill the role? I mean, there are lots of different questions you can ask, but the two things that hiring managers ask me most often is, I need somebody who's curious, who's going to ask the hard questions as well to help push them forward. And energy. So passion. But your answers are fantastic. Thank you very much. All right. So we've now come to the point where, one, you are the value proposition. You are your best unique salesperson. What is the question? What is the problem you're solving for, and how can you answer it? So, can I tell you how bots, applicant tracking systems, algorithms, hiring managers, and headhunters look at you when you are interviewing? Obviously, can you do the job? Do you have the experience? Do you have the skills? Will you thrive in the culture? And we're going to talk about culture. Do you elevate the team? Again, I think the number one thing that people look for when you're talking and or on a resume is data, metrics, a track record of results, and a pattern of growth, a pattern of results and achieving what you're doing. Trajectory, does your career make sense? Does it make sense what you've done? And we will come back to that, because that can be a little bit tricky. And then reputation. Reputation. Can I tell you, by the time you interview, someone has already spoken about you in the company, mentioned you, introduced you, whether it was a recruiter, whether it was the hiring manager. Your reputation travels ahead of you. So by the time you get there, somebody knows something about you. And when I talk about reputation, what hiring managers want to know most is, how well do you get along with others? How well do you work with others? All right. I've talked about the mindset, you as the product, you as the value proposition. I'm going to stop here for a moment. Questions? Comments? I think Deepa's looking in the Q&A, and she's going to come on and ask a question or tell me what it is that people want to know about. Anything right now before I go on to the next thing?
There are no questions here, so keep it moving.
All right. Have I helped people understand, how is the role a problem to solve? Someone did ask that question. So a role that you're interviewing for, I mean, why does someone put a role out there? They put a role out there because they have a problem to solve. They need to accelerate revenue acquisition. They need to reduce costs. They need to stop clients from calling about the same problem all the time, and somebody has to figure out what's going on in operations or in the infrastructure of the organization, what isn't working. These are problems to solve. They really are. Any job description that a hiring manager puts out there is, I need somebody to come and do something for me. I call that a problem to solve. And I think it's really helpful for you to frame it that way, because you end up, again, you're the answer. You're the solution that they are looking for. I think it's much better to think that way rather than to think, I just have the skills, I've done the job before. I don't think that's strong enough, to be honest with you. So you need to translate your experience into a value proposition. And again, take a look at what you do today, right? Easiest way to take a look at what you do today is think about what you're involved in all day long. What are the tasks you're doing? Or go back and look at your job description. That will tell you what your tasks are. How can you turn that now into a value proposition? What were the results of your contributions? What do you do all day long? And what are the results? Can I say, for those people who are here who manage teams, I always talk about a metric for management. And that is, in the last 12 months, how many people left your team? Did you have retention of 80% of the team, 90%, 100% of the team? If you had 80% or more retention of your team as a manager in the last 12 months, then I'd say you're probably a pretty damn good manager. And you want to put that on your CV. Team retention at 80%, 90%, 100% in the last 12, 24, 36 months, whatever it is. That is a great metric, because people are not leaving. They're not running from you. One of the biggest reasons people change jobs is because they don't like their managers. All right. Another question. Can we share with the recruiting manager our understanding of the problem during the interview? Absolutely. You absolutely should. Of course you should. Now, not all recruiters are created equal. I'll just say that for myself. But your recruiter may not actually understand the problem themselves. And if they don't, you may need to push them on that. Or that needs to be one of the first questions you have when you get to the interview, which is, can you help me better understand the problem I'm solving? What is it that you need from this role? Why have you gone to external recruitment? Didn't you have anybody internally who could fill this role? But absolutely, you can share with the recruiting manager your understanding of the problem during the interview and get agreement that, yes, that is the problem. When you've applied for a position directly with a company, what's the best way to follow up and keep your resume and name at the top of the list of candidates? Good question. Very difficult. Look, if you apply online, just online, and there's nobody involved, Deepa, do you want to say something before I answer this question?
Go ahead and answer your question, and then
Okay.
I've got a couple for you.
If you're applying online, just directly online, no one involved, unfortunately, you're going into an algorithm, and it's really, and let's just assume you get the interview. And I'm going to take the question from the perspective that you've actually had the interview, you've met somebody. Best way to follow up is to send a thank you note. First of all, send a thank you note. Nicole, it was great to meet you. Really appreciated the opportunity to learn more about the opportunity. I would love to continue our conversations. Please let me know if there's anything else you need or something like that. And then I think 2 weeks later, if you haven't heard anything, you email again. You email again. If you don't have their email, go onto LinkedIn, send the message on LinkedIn. I wouldn't text, not yet. There's a time for texting, but not in the initial stages, in my opinion, of interviewing. But I would send an email. Now, I know if there are younger people on the call, if you millennials are on the call, welcome. This is good stuff for you too. I know you don't email, you text, but I would email a hiring manager. I really would. And I think you just need to keep yourself on the forefront. You might also, maybe in the second or third email, include an article maybe where you're mentioned in. Include something else. Include an article that has some relevance to the role or the industry or something having to do with the role. Show some curiosity. Show that you're thinking about that hiring manager. I'm going to stop right now because I'm going to let Deepa ask a question. We do have some other questions that have come in, and I'm going to try to get to all of them. I don't know how to stop chat from scrolling, and then because I kind of lose them. I lose the questions because the next one is coming in. But Deepa, please, your question.
Yes. Okay, so the first question is, outside of interviews, how else can we communicate our value proposition to our network and industry for visibility?
Excellent question. I haven't gotten there yet in my presentation here. All right, look, are you all on LinkedIn? If don't raise your hand and don't tell me you're not on it because I don't want to know. You should all be on LinkedIn, and you should have a really good LinkedIn profile. You should have a good professional picture. By the way, nothing personal. I don't want to see your pictures with dogs. I don't want to see your pictures with your children. I really don't. It's lovely, but that's Instagram and Facebook. This is LinkedIn. This is a professional platform. I want to see a professional picture. If you don't have a professional picture, go get one. And please don't put your passport picture on there. Nobody wants to see that either. People want to see you smiling. People want to see that you're happy, that you're... All right, so enough about the picture. Your LinkedIn profile is a phenomenal branding tool. Phenomenal. By the way, you should not be a passive LinkedIn user. You need to be active. And by that, you need to publish content. Now, if you're not in a position to publish content, you don't know what to publish, then repost someone else's content and put a comment. Great article. Loved it. This resonated with me. Congratulate people on their promotions. Show activity in your LinkedIn profile. If you're just not comfortable publishing yourself, and look, most people aren't. And I know that lots of companies have lots of rules about what you can publish, what you can't, what you can post, what you can't. Find out what your company rules are. But you ought to be on LinkedIn and active, because I will tell you, when I look at someone's LinkedIn profile, if I see that there's been no activity for 6 months, I think, where you been? What are you doing? You will, look, I think you'll see that very successful people post or repost or comment or find an article that you liked and simply throw it up there and say, this was a fascinating article. Hey, I challenge you all to repost today's announcement about today's session and say, this was a great session. 7 steps, 7 things I learned differently. I mean, whatever you're going to post.
Yeah.
I think that's incredibly important. I think that is one of your strongest tools to build your brand.
Thank you, Nicole. I'm going to add to that and put in a little plug here for women in transaction banking. Joining industry bodies is a great way to network and to get your brand out there and to get others to notice you and realize who you are. I've noticed this I've been at BAF now for 4 years, and the Bankers Association for Finance and Trade, and I noticed that all the bankers know each other. And they all know you, Nicole, because of that. It's the platform that allows for engagement, collaboration, and networking. That's very important. So it doesn't have to be BAF, but join any industry body that deals with your career path.
Yeah, I am DEPA and BAF offered that if I wanted to show slides during this presentation, I could, and I'm not showing any slides. However, I do have a slide. And you can't see it because I'm throwing it up on the screen there. It is my tips. It is tips on managing your career. And right up there is build your network, attend industry functions, put yourself out there, And again, I know it's difficult for those of you who are introverts who think, I don't want to go. You're going to have to find a way to go. Take a buddy so you're not alone. But absolutely, look, networking is the #1 way to build your brand. And I mean networking internally at your company and externally. When I was just quickly, my history, I spent 20+ years in transaction banking in various sales and sales leadership roles. And then I went on to this next career as a recruiter. And by the way, the reason I transitioned from banker to recruiter is because my role was made redundant. I like to put that out there. I like to tell people there's life after banking. There's life after something if you've ever found yourself in a redundant situation. But when I was a banker and a young banker, look, I'm an early bird. I am absolutely a morning person. So I used to get to the office by 7:30, normally every day. It's just what I did. There were not a lot of people at 7:30 in the office, but I'll tell you who was in the office at 7:30, very senior people who were trying to get caught up on their emails before the day started, or put some time into thinking before they get transacted all day, like we all do. I used to be in the office and I used to see these people and think, how can I go introduce myself? Like, shouldn't I say hello? Shouldn't I network? Well, I wasn't confident enough to go walk up to someone's office, knock on the door and say, hi, I'm Nicole Meyer. But I paid attention to when they went to go get a cup of coffee. I paid attention to when they walked down the hall, literally to the copier, right? This is what we did back then. And I would follow them with getting my own cup of coffee and taking something to the printer. And I would introduce myself there, quick conversation, want to introduce myself. This is what I do. And I added value along with what I did. I'm telling you, those little things help. And by the way, for those of you who think that you're going to be working from home for the rest of your lives and you have great aspirations for growth and achievement and promotion, get yourselves to the office. I'm telling you. Get yourself to the office. That's on my tip sheet. Okay, so.
All right. Now,
are we good?
Next question.
Yes.
Speaking of AI, some of our interns talk about beating the algorithm, in quotes, in resume screening processes. What does that mean? And does it matter at the mid-senior level? And how do we beat it if it does?
It matters at every level. It absolutely matters at every level. If you are submitting a resume that looks and reads like a job description and nothing else, I'm going to say your chances are slim. What did I mention before? Data, metrics. You need data. You need to show, because I will tell you, these algorithms are looking for numbers. They're looking for percentage growth. They're looking for reduction in cost. They're looking for dollar signs or pound sterling or euros or whatever your currency is. They are looking for data. That jumps out in most of these algorithms to say, oh, there's data on the page, which means somebody is telling me that they are good with proof. Because, and I will get to this in a minute on the resume. All right, I'm going to assume 90% of you on your resumes have a paragraph at the top that talks about, I am a seasoned, successful, energetic, problem solver, business developer. Well, of course you are. Everyone is. Who isn't? Because what's the alternative? I'm lazy. I don't really like to get up and go to the office every day. Don't really achieve my results. I mean, of course you're perfect. Because what else would you say? But let me tell you, what a waste of your resume. Nobody reads that. Nobody reads it because everybody knows what it said, what it says. What you should have up there in the top part of your resume are bullet points that show your core competencies and strengths. That's what an algorithm is looking for. What are the problems you're solving for? And potentially data up in those bullet points. And if not there, they should be under the jobs that you list on your resume. So beat the algorithm with data and also keywords. For God's sake, read the job description thoroughly. Look for keywords on the job description and make sure you have those keywords on the resume that you submit. And by the way, you may have to redo your resume every time you apply. Yep, that's what you have to do. I said it. One size does not fit all. So, any other questions? If not, I'm going to.
Yes. What to consider while positioning yourself without losing yourself? It's an interesting question.
That's a really interesting question. Do you know something? Authenticity is really important. Authenticity is important. Vulnerability is important. Look, hiring is a little bit like dating, right? Do I want to spend time with these people? Do I want to spend time with you? Are you going to elevate me? Are we going to have fun together? Are you going to solve my problem? I'm assuming I'm the hiring manager. And so I don't want to know that what you're presenting is inauthentic. I think it's fine to show some vulnerability. You know, going back to the question that somebody asked a little while ago, which was, is it okay to ask the question about the problem I'm solving for? Absolutely. I think it's really okay to ask questions like that. Like, do you know what? Forgive me, I'm a little confused. The job description reads this way to me, but as we're talking, I feel like there's a different problem we're solving for here. Am I getting that right? Is that accurate? I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I also think that as you're interviewing, again, whether you're having conversations with people internally about a potential next promotion or where your career is going, maybe it's your manager, or maybe it's someone else, a hiring manager, or you're talking to a recruiter or an external hiring manager. I think you ask the question at some point, how are you feeling about this conversation? Do you think I might have the skills that you're looking for? Is there anything about this conversation that concerns you? I mean, I think it's okay to show, one, again, curiosity, asking questions, but two, showing some vulnerability, being authentic. Look, you cannot present something that you're not and get away with it. Really, at the end of the day, people get it. Look, there's some wonderful actors out there. Look, we all know them. They're all in our companies. They were certainly in banking when I was in banking. People who are a little bit of empty suits, but boy, do they present well. Now, those are the people who really took my advice to go take a public speaking class. Eventually, those people are all found out for the most part. They really are. Now, for whatever reason, they are in those positions of power, of hiring, of seniority, but I think it's absolutely fine not to lose yourself, and you shouldn't, because you know why? You know who's going to be miserable? You are. And at the end of the day, we all work too hard and spend way too much time on our careers, frankly, as we should. This is my passion. You've got to be happy in what you do. And so therefore, when you apply for a job, by the way, apply for jobs that you want. Do not apply for a job because you feel like, oh, I can do it. Make sure you've got some passion in what you want to do, because that also will come across.
We've got a few more questions here. handled X number of queries. Is this the kind of data I can I can include on my resume?
Sure you can, but I think you need to take it farther than that. So what, Deepa, was the question acted on X number of inquiries?
This is handled.
Handle X number of inquiries. That doesn't tell me anything about what you've done with them. Handled X number of inquiries leading to a conclusion that X, Y, and Z, whatever you concluded, just handling the inquiries is not enough. You have to talk about what you did with it. Did you handle those inquiries and determine that what the data was telling you about those 700 inquiries is that 600 of them are the same? Everybody's asking the same question. Clients have the same problem. Therefore, you've identified a gap or a problem to solve.
Great.
That's what you need to do with that kind of comment.
When you've applied for, and you may have kind of already answered this, when you've applied for a position directly with a company, what is the best way to follow up and keep your resume and name at the top of the list of candidates?
You know what? Really hard if you've applied online and there's no hiring manager identified, there's nobody in HR or recruitment internally at the company that's been identified. You've simply put something in online. Unfortunately, you can't reapply and you have nobody to reach out to. It's really difficult. What I would encourage you is if you've gone on LinkedIn, right? People post jobs on LinkedIn. If you've gone on LinkedIn or wherever onto the company's website and you've applied, perhaps you ought to look at your network and see if you know anyone who works there. Then you reach out to the people who work there and you say, I've just applied for this role. Do you know anything about it? Do you know who the hiring manager is? Now, I'm not an advocate that you go bother the hiring manager, not yet. But maybe this person has some insights into the role. I mean, again, this is working your network so it works for you. Difficult to do when you're just applying to a role online where you just have no other information. It's really hard to keep your resume at the top of the list because you just don't know what list you're on and where it goes once it gets there. I see something in the chat that I do want to actually address. It says, how do we identify keywords in job descriptions? I think keywords in a job description are, we are hiring to fill product management role, develop products. I mean, I think, oh, it's a product role. It's to develop products or it's to increase market share. I mean, those are the keywords that you need to think about and think, can I do that? How can I increase market share? How have I increased market share? Because that's what people want to know. People want to hire you knowing that you did this work somewhere else, really, that you achieved success in this capacity somewhere else.
I have a question for you myself.
Yes.
Would you recommend using AI apps to update our resumes according to particular job descriptions? So like ChatGPT or resume.co or any of these other ones that are out there.
Yes. 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 Are you kidding? I am pitching for new business with a prospective company on Thursday, and I have a presentation. This morning I was looking at it like, I think I need some help from ChatGPT. And I put in my presentation to ChatGPT and I loved what it gave back to me. Now, some of it I was like, I don't speak like that, so I don't think I'm going to put that in there. But other items, I thought, oh God, it's just so much more eloquent.
Yeah.
And I want to be more eloquent. So yes, I absolutely encourage you to do that. Now, I think the problem with AI, ChatGPT, and any of these is that they don't really know you and their ability to. Now, hey, I haven't tried this yet, but maybe you want to try this. You might put in there to ChatGPT, I need to strengthen my resume with data and metrics that show my contributions and impact to the organization. Here's what I do every day, and I think here's some data to support it. See what it spits out. I'm telling you, this stuff is scary good. It really is. So yes, why not use that? Everybody does. They probably wrote the job description with AI and ChatGPT. So
we constantly hear that AI is going to take our jobs, but I'm a firm believer in the future belongs to those who know how to use AI to their benefit and to help in their workday.
Absolutely.
Definitely.
Absolutely. Yep.
There are a few more questions in there. Where can we find a sample of modern day resumes?
You know what? ChatGPT.
Mhm.
It's a great question. I'm going to go right to my notes here on job descriptions. First of all, have I not said your resume is not a job description? Do not make it your job description. It's so flat. It's a little bit boring. And when I see them look like that and they come in, I'm like, ugh. Uh, and I always go back to people to say, could you add some data? Can you prove to me that you're as good as you think you are? Because your job description just tells me what you do all day, but there's nothing in it to show that you've had any success. We talked about the summary statement. Get rid of your summary statement. Put bullet points there with your strengths, your core competencies. One size does not fit all. And by the way, European resumes and American resumes very different. European resumes typically have pictures on them, a lot more verbiage, talk about their
Family
marital
information.
status, and
Yeah.
you know what? Fine, that's how they do it in Europe, and we work globally, so that's fine. I'm going to assume most of the people, or many of the people on the call, are from the Americas or from the US. First of all, I don't want to see your colors. I don't want to see that pink is your favorite color, so you have a pink border on the left. No, it's just a waste of space. I think you need something super professional. Your name, your email, and your phone number on top. Nobody needs to know your address. I would never give away my address. People can find your address. Trust me. They just have to Google your name, right? You don't need to put your address on there. Now, where location is important is where you have to go back to the office. And more clients are saying, I want somebody in the office. So please stop trying to convince people that you can do the job remotely when the job says we work in the office 3 to 4 days a week. But it should be your jobs in chronological order, the most recent one first, and you should have metrics that support what it is that has made you successful in that role. By the way, if you speak at industry events, if you have an online presence because you publish a newsletter, if you sit on any boards, you should put that on your resume because everybody wants to know that you've got some industry recognition, some industry engagement. That is incredibly important. So put that on your resumes as well. Someone just threw a question out there that two questions, and I'm going to answer the first one very quickly. Is it true that a CV has to be ATS readable, meaning that even the font matters? Do you know something? Interesting question. I've never had that question before. I'm going to say no. I'm going to say the font does not matter. I mean, I wouldn't put it in a font that people can't read and something that's so creative that, it looks weird. But no, I don't think the font matters. Second question is about weaknesses. How can we best answer this while being authentic and show we are the solution? Can I just tell you, we all have flaws. We all have weaknesses. The hiring manager that's hiring you has weaknesses too. And frankly, the weakness they may have is the role that they're hiring for, right? I always tell hiring managers, you should make sure the people you hire do the things you can't do well, right? I mean, doesn't that make sense? So when people ask about, what are your weaknesses? I wouldn't say, oh, I'm impatient. Everyone says they're impatient, or I don't, I have a high tolerance for perfection. Everybody says that. I think you need to think really thoughtfully about the role you're interviewing for. I mean, if you're interviewing for a business analyst role and you tell them that you struggle with numbers and you're not quantitative at all, well, I'm pretty sure you're not going to get the job, but you shouldn't be interviewing for that role anyway then. But if you're applying for a role, I don't know, to do something digital and you say, I've had 3 years of digital experience. I've never led a digital program myself. I'm ready to do it though. And then if I were you, I'd say, would you perceive that as a problem or a weakness? I would turn it right back to the hiring manager. Now, when you interview, I know that you get questions that are posed to you where you think, oh geez, how do I answer that? How do I answer that? It's a really good tactic for buying yourself some time to think about the answer. It's something called mirroring, like mirror, look in the mirror. So somebody asks you a question and you think, oh, geez, I don't know how to answer it. I need some time to think. Take that time to think. Don't blurt something out. Take that time to think and repeat the question. Repeat the question. Literally repeat the question. So Nicole, how would you approach this problem ABC? And I would look at the hiring manager and I'd say, how would I approach the question or the problem of ABC? Good question. I've just bought myself 20 seconds to think of an answer versus you blurting something out. Mirror it. Mirror it. Yeah, those are my comments about weaknesses. I think you need to think through what you don't do well. And by the way, you shouldn't be interviewing for a role where it requires a skill that you don't do well. You should either try to figure out how to do that better, then apply for the role. But if you don't do something well, you shouldn't be interviewing for that role. Now, people will ask you behavioral questions. How do you handle the situation where your team doesn't do what they need to do and that leaves you in a really difficult position, or you can't get your job done because others can't get or the others can't get their job done? I mean, you know what? You need to talk about, yeah, that is a problem. That is a challenge for me. Here's how I go about doing it. Here's what I do. So anyway, there is an answer there. I see a few more questions. Go ahead, Deepa.
Yes, I was just actually going to point out, there was a question here that says, how would you position yourself for a role down the line? Not the one you currently have or the one you want to currently have. So how do you position yourself for a future role down the line, and set yourself up for that?
Well, how do you know what the future role is? I mean, I would turn it back, right? I'm mirroring. What's the future role? I mean, how can you position yourself? Look, I think you can create a brand. You are the brand. Again, what I started this whole conversation with, you are the value proposition. You're the answer. You're the solution that somebody needs. You need to figure out, what are my strengths? What do I do really well? And what do I like to do? Perfect storm of presenting what your brand is. Look, if you want to position yourself for leadership, managing a team, and you don't manage a team today, then start managing someone. Ask your boss, are there juniors I can manage? We have management associates who are in the group. Can I manage? And if the answer is no, then become a mentor yourself, official or unofficial. BAFT has a great mentor program. Become a mentor people so that you can actually say on your resume, mentored a team of 3. 2 out of the 3 were promoted within 12 months. I mean, that's kind of that's a data point to say whatever you did to mentor them, they were promoted pretty quickly. That's data, right? I mean, so again, you need to think about what it is that you're doing every day and what the contribution is. So I think you have to have some idea of what the position is that you might want eventually. And then you need to put yourself in a position where, one, you're showing up at industry events and people know who you are. Because at the end of the day, when I talk about networking, it's not who you know, it's who knows you. And the only way for people to know who you are is because, one, you do a great job and you contribute. You're solving someone's problem today where you are. You show up at industry events. You speak publicly. You take an active role, maybe as a committee member on something. There's engagement with the rest of the world there. That's how people get to know who you are, and they start counting on you and they rely upon you. And when new opportunities come up, they say, wait a minute, that Nicole, yeah, hey, I like her. She's always around. I see her actively involved in whatever. I mean, honestly, that is how it frequently works internally at companies. Can I just go back to just quickly interviewing? Again, interviewing. Be curious. Be curious. Come up with really good questions to ask. Everyone's going to ask you, can you do the job? What they're going to be trying to assess as well is, do you fit in well here? So ask questions about culture. Tell me about the culture here. What works, what doesn't. And I always tell candidates, I always recommend to the candidates that I'm working with to ask the hiring manager, tell me about your personality and the kinds of people you like to hire. What are the personal attributes they have? What don't you like? Anyway, I always think that's a great question, and I think hiring managers appreciate it. Be curious, be energetic. Okay, I'm going to
Um,
stop here. I
we
have a lot
we
of practical tips, which will be in a slide that you will all have access to um, later
after
today.
this one, yeah.
Yep.
Another question here is, would you kindly share your recruiting and hiring successes with this audience?
I do see that question, and I'm not sure the person who wrote it. Hello. Could you tell me I'm not sure I understand the question. So again, I would mirror. Would you kindly share my recruiting and hiring success with this audience? What do you mean? I'm not sure I understand the question.
I think what she's trying to say, and Aaron, tell me if I'm wrong. I think she's trying to ask, is there an example you could give of someone, obviously without a name, that you placed in the industry? What were some of the challenges? What were some of the opportunities you saw for this person? How did you guide them, coach them, and what changes did they make, say, to their resume, to their public speaking skills, to their presentation, to their
Yeah.
network? What was, some of the keys to their success of getting hired?
Yeah, look, thank you, and thank you for clarifying that. And you've obviously hit it right because she said yes, that's exactly right. Look, I unfortunately most of you will not work with a recruiter when you are interviewing, so you won't have the benefit of what a recruiter can help you with, which could go from your handshake is really weak. I will never forget. I helped somebody 15 years ago in Europe, a really tall man. He was like 6'7". Like I'm tall, but he was even taller.
Wow.
And when I first met him and he came in and he shook my hand, I was like, oh, gross. Like really, like ew. Like he doesn't even shake my hand. I was like, oh, I don't want to do that again. And I thought that is so weird for somebody with that kind of height. And he was a really senior person who went on to be a CEO of one of our businesses. And I told him in this in the second interview, I said, "Can I just share an observation here? What's up with the handshake? Like, it's not what I would expect for somebody of your seniority or stature." And you know what he said? He said, "I'm 6'7". I'm incredibly strong. I'm generally afraid I'm going to break people's hands. So I've always had a really weak handshake." I said, "No, you got to change that because it leaves people with the wrong impression." So, I mean, it's silly things like that. Or you need to speak up more. Or can I tell you, for the women on the call, women interview very differently than men. Men are far faster and quicker to the punch to say, yeah, I can do that job. Oh, yeah, there's 11 things on the job description. I can do 4 of them. I got this. Whereas a woman might look at it and say, there's 11 things to do. I can do 9 of them. I'm unqualified. I'm not qualified. This is a gender thing. It really is. It's an identity thing. It's a confidence thing. So it's difficult if you're not working with a recruiter who can give you feedback, who can help you get out of your own way in interviewing. So I have look, what we do here at the Meyer Partnership is super high touch, super white glove. We are all over clients and candidates, helping them identify what works, what doesn't work, what you might be able to do better. You unfortunately don't have that when you are applying through an algorithm. So I can tell you, practice your interviewing skills, get a buddy, get a friend, talk to somebody and ask them, and forget practicing your interviewing skills. Find somebody in your company, and I really do think it needs to be somebody in the company, and say, what do you think my brand is here? What do you think I stand for? How do you perceive me in meetings? Do I speak up well? Do I ask good questions? Look, your friends are probably going to tell you what you want to hear. Your manager, though, you should also be asking those questions too, because they may not be as nice. They may say, actually, Nicole, if you would stop doing this, or if you would stop doing that. I remember once in an interview a long, long time ago, I was interviewing and the hiring manager said, "Can you stop a minute?" And I just stopped. I said, "Yes." And she said, "Your head is like a bauble and it's really distracting to me." I was like, "My head is like a bauble? You mean like one of those things you see in a car?" And she said, "Yes, you move your head too much when you talk." And I thought, "Oh, nobody's ever said that to me. Interesting." I said, "Thank you. I'm going to try. I might." And I said, "Well, if I'm going to try to answer the rest of the questions and get through the interview without moving my head too much. It might seem weird because it feels a little weird not to move my head. And I'm not moving my head now. At least I don't think I am as I'm speaking to you. I mean, you get the weirdest things when you interview or when you ask people, "Can you help me understand how I'm perceived?" Right? You need feedback. This is not a road you can pave on your own. You really do need some feedback. So I don't know if that answers your question. You can DM me separately and we can have a conversation. So I do see a role from someone else. If you're looking to make a fundamental career switch, how do you position in an interview and showcase that you're actually lower risk? Hello to you too. If you're looking to make a fundamental career switch, how do you position in an interview and showcase that you're actually lower risk? Because you're making a total career switch and somebody's thinking, "You don't know how to do that." I think you position yourself by talking about the success, by talking about the challenges that are constantly thrown at you that you answer and deliver on and perform for. We have like 1 minute. I'm
Yeah.
not sure I answered the question. You can DM me separately. Look, I invite all of you to DM me. You're welcome to connect with me on LinkedIn. Send me your questions. It'll just be between the two of us. Don't all send them to me today because I won't be able to answer all of them today. And it may take me a while, but don't think that I'm not going to answer. I absolutely will. And if I don't, then you gently nudge me, and that's okay as well. But look, I'm grateful for the time today. I feel like I have so much more to talk about. So in your comments, you let Beth know that we need part 2. So shameless
Yes.
plug, shameless plug. I don't mind doing my own shameless plug. And by the way, people, it took me a long time to get to a point where I could do a shameless plug. And you can learn how to do it. I promise. I promise. I'm going to put all these tips in a slide. It might be 2 slides because I'm also going to take some tips off of some of the questions that we had and the interaction we had. So give me until the end of the day. I'm going to send it to Deepa. Deepa, you can then send it to the attendees. Everybody,
Yes.
thank you. Thank you.
No, thank you very much, Nicole. One of the questions that I really did want to get to and we didn't get a
Oh,
chance
please,
to
please,
get
please.
to
Go
is
for it.
how can women better negotiate their pay and highlight their strengths in an interview? And we're gonna go over time for just a little bit if everybody could bear with us. I have noticed this in my career, and I've noticed this in others as well. Women negotiate different than men, and this is not a push down on men. It's not we're not. It's nothing like that. But men will come and say, "I can do this, this, and this. This is what I bring to the table, and this is how much I want." And women come to the table and say, "Well, I can do this, and I know how to do this, and I've got this skill, and I think I'm worth this much." Completely different ways of
Look,
negotiating.
it is. It's a gender thing. It's a gender thing. And it takes time and practice to be able to change that. Now, in the United States, nobody can, for the most part, nobody can ask you how much you make, right? And those laws were put into place in the last couple of years to close the compensation gender gap, right? Because men have historically, one, made more, better at asking for more. So nobody can ask how much you make, but you can share your expectations on what you think you're worth. Now, that expectation should be, yes, clearly, where are you today? And everybody who doesn't want to make more money, of course, you're going to make more money when you're interviewing. That's what you want to do. But companies also have a range in which, this is the range. And if you want more money, you need to be within that range. But that's not the question. The question is, how can I position myself? First of all, you have to go into an interview believing that you are the solution, right? What have we talked about since 9:01 this morning? You are the answer. You are the solution. And I think you have to focus on that and convince the hiring parties, hiring manager and everyone else you're interviewing with, that you're the answer to their problem. You can do this, and here's how you're going to do it. So that is the value creation without ever talking about money, right? When it comes down to talking about money, and let's assume there's nobody else involved, there's no headhunter, but you're negotiating with them. Look, I think they will have stated for you, again, this is in the US, they will have stated, here's the compensation range. And if they haven't, you need to ask them, what is the range for this role? Everyone has to publish a range, especially if you're in the state of New York and many other states. They publish a range, and you say, well, my expectation is this. If it's above the range, you're going to have to explain why you're above the range. But I think you go in saying, here's my expectation on compensation. Here's what I deliver. I have a track record of 73% growth year on year. That's the problem we're solving for here. And I think there's value to what I bring to the table. And here's my expectation on comp. And then you just stop talking. I do find women chat a little bit after that, like, what do you think? Or you just stop talking and you just look right at the person that's talking to you and let them take the next move. See where it goes. See where it goes there. Look, we could do an entire session on negotiating for compensation. It's really hard to do it in just a few seconds. Is that the same in Europe that they can't ask? No, it's not the same in Europe. In Europe, you can ask somebody, where is your compensation today? I can ask that question in Europe. I cannot ask it in the US. Somebody brought up, instead of asking what you make, they ask what you want to make with the initial online application. That's hard to answer without having some input from the company. I know, but you know what they want to know? They want to know if like your expectation is way out of line. I think what you do is you look at where you are today, and I don't know, you increase it 25%. Now, a 25% increase is a healthy increase. A healthy increase. People are not doubling comp to go to new jobs. They're just not. They're not. So maybe 20 or 25%, that's where you put it. Now, if you're shooting high, if you're a VP and you're applying for a director level role, a senior director level role, well, you might want to shoot higher in terms of your compensation, but you may not even have a shot at it because you're only a VP, but good for you for applying. And you should make that known that you're interested. Why not? But I think when you have to randomly choose a number, I would go 25% more than where you are today. And I think that's fair. I really think that's fair. I don't know if that answered your questions. Again, people, you can connect with me on LinkedIn. I will answer your questions as quickly as I can. Again, I don't have all day to answer everyone today, but I promise you I'll get to it in the coming days. So thank you again, everybody.
Thank you. Thank you, Nicole. And I want to thank you again for taking the time to come out here and provide some guidance, because I think we definitely need to have a part two, perhaps bringing in a senior hiring manager from a major bank or something to kind of complement, and you guys can work off each other. But we definitely need to have a part two to this. I appreciate the time and effort. And for all of you out there, thank you for joining today. Nicole said how you can reach her. I encourage you all to, whether you're in the industry or not, there's a lot of roles that span across industries, and she might be able to work with you on that. I encourage you to reach out to her. We have several women in transaction banking events coming up. As we mentioned early on in the webinar, industry connections, networking, external, very important. We've got some coming up in Dubai, in New York, New Jersey area, London, and Orlando, and Nairobi. So we're all over the place, and that's just our spring schedule. And if you have any questions about joining WTB, joining BAFT, if your company is not a member, please reach out to me. I'm also available on LinkedIn, and you can get my email address, or you can just email info@baft.org. So again, thank you everyone for joining. Very much appreciated. And I hope you have a wonderful holiday season coming up. Thank you.
Happy holidays, everybody.
Thank
Thank
you.
you for
Take care.
joining.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Bye.